You've done it. I've done it. We've all done it. That cookie hits the floor, and without missing a beat, you're already reaching down, counting in your head. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3. Got it! Safe, or so the legend goes. The 5-second rule might be humanity's most universally practiced food safety guideline. It's also one we've never really questioned. I mean, why would we? It makes intuitive sense. Less time on the floor means less germs. Right? Well, scientists finally tested that assumption. Spoiler, the 5-second rule is busted. Bacteria can contaminate your food in less than 1 second. But here's the thing nobody mentions when they cite that study. The actual science is far more interesting than a simple debunk. Whether your dropped snack picks up dangerous bacteria depends on factors you'd never guess. Watermelon versus gummy candy. Carpet versus tile. 1 second versus 5 minutes. The results will make you rethink everything about your dropped food decisions. The 5-second rule is one of those beliefs that crosses every cultural boundary. It shows up in kitchens from Tokyo to Toronto, passed down through generations like folk wisdom. Parents teach it to children, roommates invoke it at parties. It's the universal excuse we all share for not wasting food we've dropped. The psychology behind it is simple. Nobody wants to throw away perfectly good food over a brief floor encounter. The rule gives us permission to salvage the situation. But here's what makes this particular myth fascinating for investigation. Unlike most viral claims, the 5-second rule has been scientifically tested multiple times by multiple research teams. The story begins in 2003 with a high school student named Jillian Clarke. She was doing a summer internship at the University of Illinois. Clarke decided to actually test what everyone assumed. She dropped food on floor tiles inoculated with E. coli and measured bacterial transfer. Her work won her an Ig Nobel Prize for improbable research. But the definitive study came in 2016 from Rutgers University. Professor Donald Schaffner and his team designed the most comprehensive 5-second rule experiment ever conducted. They tested 4 different surfaces: stainless steel, ceramic tile, wood, and carpet. They used 4 different foods, and they measured bacterial transfer at 4 different time intervals. The time intervals ranged from less than 1 second all the way to 300 seconds. That's 5 full minutes of floor contact time. Their results were unambiguous. Bacteria can contaminate food in under 1 second, not 5 seconds. Not 2 seconds, less than 1 second. The transfer is essentially instantaneous upon contact. So yes, the 5-second rule is officially busted. But here's where the study gets genuinely interesting, because not all drops are created equal. Professor Schaffner put it perfectly, quote, "Bacteria don't have legs, they move with the moisture." That single sentence explains almost everything about bacterial transfer. Moisture is the vehicle. The wetter the food, the faster and more thoroughly bacteria hitch a ride onto it. Dry foods pick up far fewer bacterial passengers. The Rutgers team found that watermelon showed the highest contamination rates of any food tested. Its high moisture content acted like a bacterial sponge, soaking up microorganisms instantly. On the opposite end of the spectrum, gummy candy. Those sticky little bears showed the lowest bacterial transfer rates. Counterintuitive, right? But it makes perfect sense when you think about moisture. Gummy candy is sticky, yes, but it's not wet. The surface moisture that bacteria need to travel just isn't present. Less moisture means less bacterial highway. Now here's the finding that surprised everyone, including the researchers. Carpet actually transfers fewer bacteria than tile or stainless steel. Carpet. The thing we assume is filthy. The reason is all about surface contact. Food dropped on carpet doesn't make full contact with the bacteria-laden surface. Those fibers actually create pockets of air that limit transfer. Tile and stainless steel, by contrast, provide complete surface contact. Every millimeter of your dropped food touches every millimeter of the contaminated surface. More contact means more transfer. Wood surfaces showed the most variable results. Sometimes transfer was high, sometimes low. The researchers attributed this to wood's porous and inconsistent nature. Time does matter, but not in the way the 5-second rule suggests. The Rutgers study found that longer contact times did result in more bacterial transfer. That part of the folk wisdom holds up. But here's the critical point. The initial contamination happens instantly. After that, you're just adding more bacteria to food that's already contaminated. 5 seconds doesn't create a clean window. This wasn't the first study to reach these conclusions. Back in 2006, researchers demonstrated that salmonella could transfer from floor to food within just 5 seconds of contact. In 2007, Clemson University food scientists published additional research on bacterial transfer times, further confirming that contamination begins the moment food touches a contaminated surface. By 2014, researchers at Aston University in the UK were focusing on a different question. They asked, given that contamination is instant, what factors actually determine how much bacteria transfers? All of this research pointed to the same conclusion. The 5-second rule is what scientists call a significant oversimplification. Time is a factor, but it's not the most important one. What actually matters is a combination of 3 things: how wet your food is, what type of surface it landed on, and how contaminated that surface was to begin with. That last point is crucial and often overlooked. The floor in your clean home is dramatically different from the floor of a busy restaurant kitchen or a hospital waiting room. Medical experts point out that for healthy individuals with functioning immune systems, the actual health risk from briefly dropped food in a typical clean home is relatively minimal. Your body encounters bacteria constantly. Your immune system handles routine microbial exposure as part of its normal function. Not every bacterial contact results in illness. However, the calculation changes completely for people with compromised immune systems. Elderly individuals, young children, pregnant women, and anyone immunocompromised should absolutely avoid eating dropped food. In food service environments, the rules are crystal clear and non-negotiable. Any food that touches the floor must be discarded immediately. No exceptions. No 5-second grace period. The reason is simple. Commercial kitchens can't take chances. The floors see constant foot traffic, spills, and cleaning chemicals. The bacterial load is unpredictable and potentially dangerous. So, where does this leave us with the 5-second rule? It's not that time is completely irrelevant. More time does mean more bacteria. The research confirms that much. But the rule fundamentally misleads us about what's actually happening. It creates a false binary. Under 5 seconds safe, over 5 seconds dangerous. Reality is far more nuanced. Here's what actually matters for your dropped food decisions. First, consider the moisture content. Dropped a dry cracker? Much lower risk. Dropped a slice of juicy melon? Much higher risk. Second, consider the surface. Surprisingly, carpet transfers fewer bacteria than your smooth tile or steel surfaces, though that doesn't mean carpet is actually clean. Third, and most importantly, consider how clean that floor actually is. When was it last cleaned? How much foot traffic does it see? Has anyone been sick in your household recently? The honest truth, in your own clean home, eating food you've quickly picked up off the floor is probably not going to make you sick, probably, for most healthy people, most of the time. But science wants you to know, the protection isn't coming from your quick reflexes. It's coming from your immune system and the relative cleanliness of your environment. If you're immunocompromised, skip the gamble entirely. If you're cooking for others, especially vulnerable populations, treat dropped food as contaminated, because it is. And here's an unexpected takeaway from the research. If you drop something wet and it bounces from tile to carpet, that carpet landing might actually be the lesser evil. The 5-second rule persists not because it's scientifically accurate, but because it serves a psychological need. It gives us permission to not waste food we've dropped. Some researchers have even speculated about the hygiene hypothesis connection, the idea that some microbial exposure might actually strengthen immune function over time, though this remains controversial. What we can say definitively is this: the 5-second rule has been tested, and it doesn't work the way most people think. Contamination is instant. Everything else is risk assessment. The real question isn't whether your food got contaminated when it hit the floor. It did. The real question is whether that contamination matters for your specific situation. We try to bring this level of investigation to every episode. If you want to keep separating viral myths from scientific reality, subscribing helps you catch each new investigation. The Rutgers study was published in the journal Applied and Environmental Microbiology in 2016. It remains the most comprehensive controlled study of the 5-second rule to date. Professor Schaffner and his team analyzed 2,560 individual measurements across all their test combinations. That's serious scientific rigor applied to a seemingly simple question. It started as a high schooler's summer project in 2003. Within 13 years, it became a peer-reviewed study that definitively answered one of humanity's most universal food questions. So the verdict on the 5-second rule: busted, but nuanced. Bacteria transfer is instantaneous. No grace period exists. But not every bacterial encounter means illness. What matters is moisture, surface type, environmental cleanliness, and your own immune status. The 5-second rule gives you zero protection that science can measure. Next time your cookie hits the floor, you can still eat it if you want. Just don't pretend you're racing against some bacterial timer. You're not. You never were.